Did I do it?
I think you did. Oh, I get Clinton in here.
Can anyone hear?
I can hear you. I'm trying to get hold on. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good evening.
I am trying to get our other guests in the room.
I wish I have a fun, see if I can do the amuse-bouche. Currently reading Gary Steingart's article about going on an inaugural voyage aboard the biggest cruise ship that has ever sailed, which is in the Atlantic.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, here I am. I'm just making small talk, but anyway, very funny. It sounds, kind of agony and ecstasy. Lots of food, as we know from cruise ships. And what else do I have in my bag? Many back issues of The New Yorker that I have to get to. Sarah Thornton's new book, Tits Up, which had a cover with a lot of, boobs on the front. But then I saw someone like ogling it on the subway, and I was like, is this? I don't know. So anyway, just started it. Learning a lot about tits. Clinton says he's waiting to get in.
I know. I'm
Hi,
trying
Clinton.
to get him in. I see his request. This is the beauty of this stuff. Let me try it again. Elizabeth, I see you also trying to get in, and the accept button's not working. So everybody, thanks for being here. Just be patient with us.
We should be able to include multiple people, right?
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, I'll continue my perusal of things that are in my bags. Oh, hey!
Did I get you?
He is. You did it. Clinton King, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello. I don't have one of those thingies to hold my phone, so I'm using a cluster of bananas.
Oh, great.
Good shape,
Nice.
It's like yeah.
It's actually very, very ingenious. I'm using a vase, so yeah.
All right.
I gotta get one of those things with nice lighting, and one of those influencer sets or something.
You could have fooled me. You look great.
Yeah, it's the lighting.
Yeah. I see someone ask if you're supposed to ask questions. You just asked a question, Stephen, but you're welcome to keep asking questions. I'm sure we would love to field them. For those who don't know, Clinton just finished a show in Hong Kong. Is that right?
Yeah, just went down. Yeah.
And also has an amazing Vogue feature out today. Is that right?
Today's I posted. I think it came out today.
That's awesome. That's great. Congratulations. I haven't read it yet, but how did it feel?
It's I met Heidi who assisted in that. It was just so serendipitous, and it was kind of the cherry on top. The show was the cake, and the little interview was the cherry on top.
That's awesome. I think, Stephen, you type your questions, and it's Elizabeth.
Yay!
It worked.
We did it.
Hey guys.
I can't. Can you guys see Clinton? I cannot see Clinton.
I see Clinton.
I see Clinton.
Okay.
Everyone.
I cannot.
People.
And I also can barely hear.
He's kind of got a pause in him, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Well, I can hear you all. I'm happy. You know me. I mean, I'm happy to come into your asking questions because you've both been subject to that on multiple occasions. So I'm always happy to step on in. But Rami, if you can hear us all, then take it away.
Yeah. Okay. So you're all a whisper, but I'm going to hear very well. I'm going to listen very carefully, and I'm just really thankful that you guys are on, and that we sort of pulled this off. Yeah. So thanks everyone for joining. We got some people watching. People join. We're here because you wrote this amazing book, and I love it. And I wrote a lot of notes, and we're not going to get to all of them because we only have, I don't know, an hour. But I'm going to introduce people because I don't know who knows everybody, and so I'll just read some bios of people, but I'll also tell you quickly about myself, and then I have a couple questions, and then I'll just let you guys talk, and it'll be fun. So I'm Rami Metal, and I have a company called Kinstler that basically makes contemporary art puzzles. I started a couple years ago, really because I like puzzles, but then I wanted to find something interesting to put on them, and I knew a little bit about art, but not a ton, and I sort of like deep dived into the art world and found some amazing people that I eventually got to work with some of them. So I made a couple of these, and now I wanted to also add other things to our shop to get people interested in art, and so I'm starting to offer books. Today is the first day that the books are live in the shop. Go, it's hellokinstler.com. This is there for sale. Buy it, please. Okay.
That's normally my line. Thank you, Rami.
Oh, I'm gonna keep doing it. No, we're moving products here. But yeah, go ahead also. So I'll just some bio. So Bianca Bosker is joining us, and she's the New York Times best-selling author of, I think, now 2 books now, right? Cork Dork and Get the Picture, a mind-bending journey among the inspired artists and obsessive art fiends who taught me how to see. And she's a contributing writer for The Atlantic and wrote for The New Yorker, The New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and has awards from the New York Press Club, Society of Professional Journalists, and has been included in the Best American Travel Writing book, right? It's like a compilation book, right? Sounds good. And Clinton King is an artist. He's born in Ohio, lives in New York City, has a BFA from Columbus College of Art and Design and an MFA in sculpture from the School of Art Institute in Chicago. And King's artistic approach is defined by his emphasis on material and sensory qualities of painting and his minimalist approach, which often creates elaborate maximalist effects. I would really just encourage people to go to Clinton's Instagram, website, whatever it is, and check it out. It's amazing stuff. And what we could talk about art speak in a bit, but like this, it doesn't capture the kind of Clinton's work. So check that out. And then we're joined by Elizabeth Denny, who is an independent curator and art advisor with Over Under Fine Art. She was the founder of Denny Gallery, which was open for more than a decade with locations in New York City and Hong Kong. And Elizabeth received a BA in art history from, is it the Courtauld Institute? Is that right? Courtauld Institute of Art in London, and an MA in modern art from Columbia University in New York. And she lives in Brooklyn with her spouse, art historian Evan Neely, and their 2 children. So first of all, happy Mother's Day to you. And Bianca to you. And Clinton to you guys as well. I know that we all have like kids and they're small. So okay. So I wanted to kick this off to Bianca. I had a first kind of question, and I just wanted to ground people. Like, we met a couple months back, probably before the book came out in October, November, something like that, and at an art opening, and I asked you what you were doing here, there, what I was doing there, and what struck me was that you say you're doing this work. You have a book coming out, and it's really about the art world and how you had sort of you grew up around art a lot, and it was a very important part of your life, and then you sort of felt like you needed to kind of grow up a little bit, or maybe like be an adult and do other things, and you kind of left it behind. And I love that you felt like it's not too late to come back to it. It's important to come back to it. It's an important part of your life. It's not something you could just sort of hang up and say, well, I have to do other things now. So I wanted to, see if you could, talk about that a little bit, and also like just going through the book, it almost felt like you were trying to figure out like what alienated you from that world in the first place, and sort of like undoing it for not just for yourself but for everyone else, so that they don't have to, look at this world and think it's forbidding or not for them, or that they shouldn't engage in it, or So I appreciate that you've kind of done that work, so none of us have to like all work at a gallery and a museum and for artists and all the other things you did. But I just wanted to kind of like ask you to speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, Look, I think I took you're right. I mean, there was for a long time where art and I weren't on speaking terms. In Oregon, I love, like, art was a huge passion of mine growing up. And I moved to New York not long after I graduated college. And I think, I felt like I didn't know what was going on and I didn't belong. And look, I mean, I think in many ways I took the coward's way out. Like, I think I just sort of threw up my hands and I was like, I'm not going to try and, like, I don't, these words are too big, these sentences are too convoluted, like, I don't understand the rites and rituals, and I sort of let that get in the way of having a relationship with art. And so yeah, like, it wasn't until a few years ago that, for a variety of reasons, I felt like, I started to, like, feel this really nagging, like, keep you up at night type of fear that by turning my back on art, I was missing out on something really big. And I think, my initial forays into the art world, as I tried to reconnect with it, only confirmed that suspicion as I met people who were so passionate about it. I consider myself someone who's obsessed with obsession. Like, I myself don't have a hobby, like, I don't know, like in some ways, I think writing is sort of the closest thing that comes to an obsession for me. But it's like, I don't know, there's just that way that people around art, behaved like a 100-year-old painting was as necessary as a liver, right? Or like, that they were willing to, like, bet the farm to show a mangled sculpture that they thought could change the world. And like, that passion was so magnetic to me. And I think also the approach that art lovers and artists took to the world was foreign and inspiring. I feel like they had this expansive approach to life that made my life feel really claustrophobic by comparison. And I think someone had raised a question here about, like, like, last book was about, Cork Dork was sort of about wine, but also about these forgotten senses of taste and smell. Get the Pictures, it's about art, but it's also about seeing more, not only when it comes to art, but when it comes to everything. And, I do think that in some ways, these books, I had the realization when I was on book tour, like, I think emerge out of, like, a fear of death. Like, I think for me, there's sort of sense of, like, we're here for a limited number of hours on this planet. How can we get more out of it? And I think I didn't realize that going into it, but I think a lot of the art people I met talked about how I, like a lot of us, lacked visual literacy, which they said was, downright dangerous in a world like ours, when we're, Instagram's constantly trying to influence us. We've got billboards hollering at us, trying to get us to do things. And I felt like, maybe I had lived my life entirely wrong, and I needed to figure out what art lovers understood about life, and also about art. So that prompted me to throw myself in. And I, some bumps and scrapes along the way, but I was so fortunate for my relationship with art, but also just as a human being, to meet people like Clinton and Elizabeth, who, really have had a huge impact, not only on my writing, but just the way I wake up and go about my day.
And so you kind of felt that to really kind of get back into it, you really needed to do something what I think most people wouldn't do, which is do all of it. And how did you? I mean, how did you get the sense that you could pull this off? I mean, my understanding is that people didn't think that this was a very good idea. That you might be in trouble, and so yeah, but you persevered and you said, well, maybe. Did you feel like being told no is the best reason to do it?
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, for those who haven't read the book, and like, like, it was not easy. Like, getting access in the art world was one of, it was really difficult. And I've written about a lot of different subjects in a lot of different places. I had people telling me that, like, this was a terrible idea if I wanted to keep living in New York. People didn't respond to my emails. Threats about trashing my personal, professional, psychological reputation if I wrote anything they disagreed with. But you're right. I mean, I believe in learning by doing, and I was really committed to I would say, first of all, the more people told me to get lost, the more determined I was to get inside. But also, I really believe in the value of learning by doing. And so I wanted to see firsthand how an artwork got made, how it went from being this germ of an idea in someone's studio to this work that we ogle at museums. And maybe, I didn't work in Clinton's studio, but I spent time there. I think I helped you with, like, maybe with, like, little like one little, like, writing thing maybe. Elizabeth and I spent a lot of time together in a very cramped quarters. But I don't know. I mean, both of you kind of took a risk, I think, in some ways. So I'm curious. I don't know if what you think. I mean, how did you feel like having this person come knocking on your door, being like, let me record you and write down everything you say and see what's going on.
I didn't know, when you started working with us, how much uh, what you'd encountered prior, I guess. And yeah, it was interesting, different. I guess I was also always someone who liked thinking about what I was doing and why I was doing it at the same time as I was doing it. And it was really interesting to talk through those questions with you as we went along. Interestingly, the book ends up being much, of course, you're describing your own journey, but you end up describing other people much better than you describe yourself. And, you were an interesting companion, Bianca.
It's hard to write about yourself.
I wanted to ask real quick, and because Elizabeth, you have this almost like there are a lot of good quotes in this book. There's a lot of good things that people are saying that are funny, but you have this cri de coeur of like it's possibly the most memorable, which is I don't care if you want. I don't care if you know what a shit show this industry. I kind of want people to know, and I kind of wondered like, was Bianca sort of like finally someone you could talk to about this, someone who you were hoping would actually get the message out, or was she just a wonderful person to be around, and a wonderful person to be
I
around?
absolutely believed in Bianca's book and that the message was going to get out. It is something that I think, how hard it is to run a gallery is something that's talked about by certain people within the industry for sure. I guess I'm just not quite as like filtered as a person as some others were, and it was a reality I was living with literally every day, just like, how are we going to get the way months used to work when the gallery was still open was like, okay, beginning of the month, this is how much money we have to make. And like, it's still in my head, the 13th, okay, there's still time to get to the bills at the end of the month. We could still do it. I think I described the magic trick at the end of every month of getting the bills paid. It was just a daily grind, really. But yeah, absolutely believe in Bianca telling the story for sure.
And Clyn, I don't know if you can, speak to, I guess, what Julie's experience was, but your own in having this person in your world that's, sort of an interloper, but again, nice. But like what that dynamic was like.
I never saw her as an interloper. She just slipped under the door so cleanly. Can you hear me?
I could hear everybody about this much, but I think everyone else can hear
I
you.
can hear you loud and
Yeah.
clear. I like that description.
Bananas, so I don't know if the microphone is obscured or blocked. No, I mean, she just sort of slipped in, and I was very curious about what she was trying to do and what she was trying to write about. And she was very, I don't know, I thought, how long is this project going to take her? And then when I found out what she was doing, and I said, oh, okay, when she was coming to Julie's studio, I felt it was very serendipitous that, she came in at a time when Julie's career was moving up and taking off. And she came in my studio and interviewed me, and I was way more cautious. I think I was a bit more reserved about what I wanted to be heard and said, and my opinions on things. I was a bit more cautious. If anyone knows me, I'm a bit open, pretty open with my thoughts there. But when she came in, I don't know. It was when I read the book, I understood completely. Of course, I knew that she'd read Court Dark before, and we drank wine together, and I knew what her idea was. So I kind of had an idea what the book might be, but it actually came out. To be honest, it came out exactly like I imagined it to be. It was great. So yeah, I listened to the book. Sorry, I listened to it on Audible. I didn't read it, but we were in Florida, so Julie and I in the studio, we listened to the book simultaneously. So it was great. Yeah, I don't know if I answered the.
So cool.
Yeah.
Did you read the book? Did you do the whole thing?
I did, yeah, which was really fun. I got to read it so the way that I read it to myself when I was writing it, which I loved.
Cool. Can you talk a little about the sort of the anti-schmo sentiments that sort of run through, or at least some of your experience, that sort of exclusion as a choice and as a strategy, and why people think that that's useful? Yeah, obviously, as a somewhat of a schmo myself, like it feels kind of gross, but I also wonder whether there was a certain logic to it, but I do want to get your take on how you encountered it and dealt with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a topic I've thought a lot about, and I think you know, like when I started working initially in galleries, and writing press releases, spackling walls, and just sort of like being in the midst, I felt like I slowly became initiated into what I describe as sort of the strategic snobbery that the art world uses to keep the general public out. It's not all people, it's not all galleries, but I think nonetheless, there's a real commonality in a lot of the techniques, and some of it's personal and some of it's architectural. But there is a strategy. I mean, some of it is art speak, right? It's like, I remember working with a gallerist who, really coached me on the appropriate vocabulary to use when selling art, right? A work is not sold, it's placed. Elizabeth, I felt like I found my person when Elizabeth was like, don't say placed, like that's so ridiculous. Like, what does that even mean anyway? And I was like, yes, it is ridiculous, right? Like, let's just say it's but even, yeah, the hilarious double speak of like, it's not a website, it's an online viewing room. You don't send out sales pitches, you send out offers, which is kind of hilarious. It makes it sound like you're doing someone a favor when you're like, asking them to please buy a work of art. But I think there's like far more egregious examples. And I think that, art speak is an exclusionary code, right? It's something that, distinguishes you as someone who's like, part of this club or isn't. I also think, yeah, I felt it personally, right? Like being told that like that I dressed like I worked for a catering company, that I needed, like a different wardrobe, that I needed to carry myself in a different way. Like I was, far too openly enthusiastic. I had a bad compliment. I had a bad habit, I was told, of complimenting artists in their studios. Clinton, I don't know if that's ever something that's, gone off for you as an alarm, right? Yeah, like it seems strange. But
Yeah.
anyway, this is what I was told. And as someone who didn't have who was coming at it without being literate in the functioning, of the art world, I think I could only sort of kind of take it as the gospel truth. And I also think, to me, there's also other things, just in the way that galleries oftentimes hide themselves away, on second floors, so they don't necessarily make it easy to find them for the general public, and or they hide prices. They are not forthcoming with information. They're not even forthcoming with eye contact. Like you walk in and your presence is not acknowledged. I know that we can talk about how busy people are working these front desks, or this, that, the other reasons that artists might not want to share their prices openly, but I think nonetheless there is all of this adds up. It's almost like I think I interpret it as like kind of these agreed upon um, standards of business that ultimately serve to kind of keep the public at arm's length. And I think it's a way, I think it is a strategy. I think it is a strategy. I think it's a way to build mystique. I think it concentrates power in the hands of gatekeepers. I think it also, in a kind of unhealthy way, maintains this idea of the art world as being for a self-anointed few. And I don't think it has to be this way. A lot of these behaviors are new, they're developed. And, I was really excited to find people like Elizabeth and Rob and Julie and Clinton who were really excited about welcoming as many people as possible into this world and helping more people love art. And I don't want to speak for them. Maybe that's not at all how they feel. Maybe they're like, no, I actually want to see, fewer people enjoy it. But my sense, at least from the time we spent together, was that there was a real generosity of spirit, which, I think I came away from all of this and all of the years I spent really convinced that art is fundamental to our humanity. And that's all the more reason to figure out how to open it up and share this passion and make it contagious.
Elizabeth, I mean, that definitely comes across in the depiction of Elizabeth and Rob in the book. And I'm just wondering, like, did you feel like it was anomalous? Like, this is how you wanted to behave, and this is how you wanted to act in this world, but you knew that a lot of people didn't, or is there a healthy group of gallerists and general people who, share your perspective of being open-hearted and trying to bring people in as opposed to keeping people out?
There definitely are, and they're mostly the peers that I spend the most time with and collaborate with the most and spend the most time in their galleries. I know that this book, it's a picture of looking back a little bit, but I do just want to like speak toward the future, which is right now I feel that there is a big mismatch in terms of how large the industry, how large galleries have gotten, and like how many artists there are, and whether next generations of collectors and buyers are going to be comfortable with these anti-schmo, I love that, practices. I think it's going to be really problematic. I think galleries are going to have to figure out, how to welcome in some new people, because, these museum boards are getting older. And millennials and Gen Z do not like to not be looked at when they walk into a gallery. Just to share, like, this isn't just something that happens to outsiders. Like, I went through an entire floor of the Independent 3 days ago or whatever, and realized as I was going down the stairs that not a single dealer had looked up from their computer the entire time. I'd been in an entire floor, like in galleries or something.
But Elizabeth, people don't go to art fairs to sell work.
Apparently not.
I mean, they were sold. I was there I was there a couple of days ago, and there were a lot of red dots, which is good.
No,
right?
still, I mean, that's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You're scratching your thin chin very thoughtfully. Do something.
Oh, I can't even see Clinton's chin. This is crazy. Tell me.
I'm all chin anyway. No, I mean, I don't know. I have different perspectives on this. Coming from a small town, working through museums, entering into a city, working my way in as an art handler through the hierarchy of galleries, up to blue chip galleries in different positions. And then even, working the last 8 years for, private dealer in the Upper East Side, I sort of got a pretty good view of the entire spectrum over all those years. So there's different ways of looking at this. And I think we have to remember that, like anything else, sports or whatever it may be, the longer it's been there and the more developed it is, the smaller the language, the indicators, the social indicators, the verbal indicators. That's a natural thing, that there is a nuance that develops in order to, to delineate yourself from new and old and upcoming. And I think these things are natural. That doesn't mean that I support, total schmoism, as you mentioned, but I think in some way it's a natural progression, whether you like it or not. I think it's probably inherent in any highly developed structure. Okay, I'll say that. I've seen them in other things as well, not just the art world. I'm sure if we look into it, you'll find usually it's control of language or control of image and things like that. But again, we're talking about a visual language here, and we're talking about a structure that sells it. So we are talking about something that's in between a museum and a store, right? An art gallery, somewhere acting as a museum that sells you stuff, right? But you will get this idea of, I think what's worthy of being discussed here is that, with the primary and secondary art markets being a big issue here that's not being discussed, and the speculative gap that happens between what a artwork sells at primary market and sells in the secondary art market or an auction house, there has to be some sort of a delineation there, because an artist can just can go bust if they were picked up and if their work hit auction and was selling for hundreds of $1,000s and goes from $5,000 to $100,000. There has to be some system in order to act as a buffer. Does that make sense? I think the hierarchy, the spectrum is essential in helping the artist to an extent. I don't want to. I'm giving something in the middle here, but there has to be some sort of way of closing gaps like that in the market, which is an odd thing to think of, but important nonetheless.
Yeah. Though I think, to try and I think bring those two ideas together, I think that, there's I think oftentimes this idea of like there's I think the art world often trades on this idea of like it being a zero sum game. And it's like, you know, there's not a lot of if one artist is succeeding, another is failing. But also like if one somehow this idea that like the world of buyers can't expand. And I think that mentality sometimes leads to putting up walls, sort of like we're going to keep going after the same, handful of people and selling them work. And, I agree with Elizabeth that it's like, why not just make it possible for more people to enter? Maybe it's at the, more inexpensive part of the spectrum that you're describing, Clinton. But, to me, like, I really hope that the book, I wrote it, and then maybe this sounds ambitious, but like, I wrote it with the hope that people who spent years in the art world would read it and learn something new, but also that people who maybe had never bought a work of art or had never even gone to a gallery would feel compelled to make art a part of their lives and maybe even buy it. And I do think that it would be really, I get really excited when I think about an art market where we're just moving beyond this pretty tiny group of like quote unquote collectors, and we sort of make it easy and happy for everyone to go out and buy an original piece of art by an artist who is working today. Like, again, maybe that's overly optimistic, but yeah, there's so much great art out there. There's so much great art out there. I think there is like a artificial scarcity mindset in the art market that somehow genius is in short supply. And, there's so much great art and you don't have to, mortgage your house to buy it.
Well, what about this? Here's an idea. What about imagining that there are a spectrum of people who have lots of experience making art? Say they've been making art for 20 years. Then you have the people who've been, who have not just entered the art gallery, just started their first gallery, been working in the art world for 20 years. What's to say there's not someone who's buying art who's been buying art for 20 years? There's going to be a different level. For instance, you can sell a painting to someone with no provenance. You could say they don't have any public collections, or they don't. When you sell them an art, it just maybe goes in their foyer and disappears. That work wouldn't then continue to work for the artist very well. It kind of vanishes into a room. But there are some buyers of art, or purchasers of art, or collectors of art that have collections, and when you sell them art, maybe it gets shared, or maybe it's to other collections, or they post it, and it seems to have a life of its own. That would be an example of, to me, someone higher up with more experience. So I think we should not try to see all art buyers as the same, as we shouldn't try to see all artists that work at the same level and all dealers that working at the same level.
It's funny because that was what I was about to kind of bring up, because there is sort of a negative portrayal, which I think, of the exclusivity, and that people, you may have money, but you're gonna be judged. And if you don't have the connections, if you aren't going to go to the parties, if you aren't going to, you're not a trustee of the museum, you're not, like, there's a risk that the painting, whatever the artwork, will live in this person's house, and that's fine, and they'll get enjoyment out of it, but it stops there. It doesn't have any other opportunity to kind of get out and get the artist higher up on the pecking order, or have his prices go up, or just generally live beyond that place. And so when I hear of some of the practices, like people judging me if I'm walking in and I want to buy something, and I don't meet the criteria, those things, like, I kind of get it. If you're an artist, maybe you would, you don't want to be exclusive. You'd like to have it everywhere, but you also, if the choice is between someone who's a trustee at a museum who will be able to talk about it with whoever, or, someone who's an influential whatever muckety muck, that has value, that the dentist who does very well and is really nice and has a house in Westchester, and showed up at the gallery, maybe can't bring to the table. And so I just wondered, Elizabeth, maybe from your perspective, did you ever feel pressure to try to get whoever the artist is to get a decent amount of the pieces in those hands, the good people, even though you might dislike them, but like they might like give it more of a life to the artist, to the work? Or were you, did you sort of scorn that approach and like whoever wants it, I'm happy to give it to them?
Absolutely. I mean, Bianca covers this really well in the book too. There's so many funny lines, but I like the one where I admitted to drooling on the sales sheet because I discovered that it was a like museum trustee that we just sold something to. Anyway, I just think that the one like everything that everything that you're talking about is totally correct. You're just assuming though that we're talking about the situations with artists who have really high demand, right? And yes, everything that we just said applies perfectly to them. I would just say that I think there's a misunderstanding amongst the public of how much of the art world is operating in those really high demand systems. There's a lot of like faking it behind the scenes from galleries and probably from artists, making it think that there is more demand than there is. And I think that in fact there's a huge amount of work that's not meeting buyers at all. Probably I would argue at all of those levels of the market, Clinton, but particularly at the more emerging price point. And so of course, so galleries have to be able to quickly, and artists, if they're doing their own sales, have to be able to quickly operate in different ways for their different parts of their program, which is just it's a really important skill to have, to be able to work for artists with lower demand as well as to be more discerning with artists with higher demand.
The other thing I would add to that too, though, is I think that, sorry to jump in, but like, I also think like you never know, right? Like I remember a dealer was like, I'm just not interested in selling someone like their first piece of art, like someone who's going to walk in here and I'm going to sell them something and this is going to be the first time they ever bought a work. Like I'm not interested in that person for the sort of reasons you enumerated, the presumption being that like, they're not going to give an additional life to the work. They're just going to hang it over their couch and love it every day. God forbid. But I also think that struck me. I was like, but you have to start somewhere, right? There has to be a first work. And I think that you just also never know whether someone is going to buy that first work and have it ignite for them a passion in which they become the sort of maniacal, obsessive collector that wants to do everything they can to help artists succeed and grow in their work. And I think the Icy Gays, who I write about, are a good example of that. I mean, they're a collector couple from Minot, North Carolina, who, kind of happened into the art world sort of by accident. And, it's kicked off this just absolute passion for it. And they just lent many of the works in their collection to a museum show at, I think it's the Plains Art Museum in North Dakota. So I think, they are, to me, an interesting example of someone who like, it's not like they were descended from art world royalty. It's not like, they, had some incredible pedigree, but they were passionate and they bought that first work of art and then they bought a second and a third and a whole lot more after that.
I agree with that. It's not a myth. There were a number of collectors that I worked with when they were very, very early in their career who were, because they were in their 20s or early 30s, and now they're really impressive collectors with great collections. And I'm glad no one judged them or told them no early on. It would have been harder if they had, experienced a lot of these exclusionary practices.
Can I ask one of the, I think, parts about the book that I found really interesting that you really clued in on throughout sort of is sort of talking about beauty in the art world and the value that the art world seems to subscribe to beauty and how it's evolved over time, and how your perspective has changed over the course of the thing about the book. And then I know Clinton, there's something about when you were in art school that beauty was frowned upon, and I'm curious how that influenced your work. And Elizabeth, I know that you talked about things that you look for, and you said formally beautiful, or there is there is some beauty that is necessary in there. Not maybe in the way everyone thinks of it, but there's something there. And I was wondering if you can kind of get into that a little bit.
Well, I think it's like when you go to undergrad and you go into grad school, you do you confront that idea of this. You start out very earnest and very honest, and I think it's some of your best work as far as how it feels when you're making it. And then as you continue to move in art, you start to realize that you have actually struck many paths that have been forged many, many times before you. And you start to get educated, and I hate to say that word, but you do begin to know more and more art and art history and the lineage of art and the many of artists that have done different paths and the way they've gone. You do start to see logical conclusions to certain ways of making work, making sculpture, making painting. You're right. Some artists have gone and taken these things all the way. And I think we've been sort of saturated in this abject, deconstructivist mode of working for so long that we're sort of standing, in my opinion, on a very huge pile of deconstructed work. And we're constantly asked as artists to somehow pick up these old pieces and make new things. And I think beauty, I think it might be cyclical. I think this idea of beauty it's almost seen as too easy or decorative at worst, or maybe at best. But I feel like, yeah, definitely in grad school, something that was too beautiful or earnest or skillful was suspect, somehow suspect, if it didn't take in account some sort of abject or some sort of sarcasm or something. Now, this is all going to be cyclical, and we are kind of coming out of a cycle now of a certain style and a certain function, and it's going to be in regards to the time that we're living in, the political statements, the political air, what movement was just coming out or whatever. So I think, yeah, I do remember that. And I don't care about that anymore at this state. I just work and I try to be as close as I can to what I need, knowing what I know, but I'm not reacting anymore to these ideas, at least not currently. I don't care as much about all that stuff I learned or read in school or yeah. Not that I'm reacting against it either. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
I don't even know if I'm answering the question, but I mean, I do remember telling that to you, and it's true. But
It sounds like something that you were made hyper aware of, and eventually you had to kind of get past, even just through the work, kind of getting past those considerations at all.
yeah, you have to get once you've sort of you have to get past the movements. You have to digest it. You have to digest that, and then come up with something that's totally your own, instead of making an illustration of an idea that's already been there for a while, or a reaction against an idea that's a while. I didn't want to make that anymore. I don't want to make a reaction, and I don't want to make. I don't know. Does that make sense? Yeah. At this stage, yeah.
And Elizabeth, does beauty factor in, when when you had your gallery, how did it play in your mind? Like, don't want to be too pretty, but it's like you also want something to really, strike a chord visually. But
I'm not really a good philosopher on beauty, I guess. Like I feel like I learned more about it from other parts of the book, to be honest. Like I thought when Julie talked about, really needing to experience things that are new, and Bianca now, saying, this is really about like life. This is about like, slowing everything down to like experience everything in life more fully and more deeply. And I guess that's more what I look for in art is like, am I learning something new here? And yeah, a lot of times, like, I guess with the gallery, sometimes beauty felt like a spoonful of medicine, spoonful of sugar to help the medicine go down. And sometimes it felt like an end, and it never really felt like an end in and of itself. Yeah. Always like ideas. I don't know.
I love this question because I feel like there's, to me, I think beauty is like subtly a really big kind of backbone to the book. And I love debating it and hearing, what all of you think about it. And some part of me would like love if we could like take this conversation, all go walk around the city and like see what we think is beautiful. Because I have a feeling, the answers would surprise us, and it wouldn't just be like Manhattan Henge or something like that, and the sunset. But I don't know. I felt like for me, beauty was something that at the outset of my journey, I was really like warned against. I felt like it was something that was treated as taboo. And I don't think it's just the art world. I think that there is a deep suspicion of beauty that has run through sort of like intellectual circles for a very long time now. I think it exists in so many different parts of our life. And I think I came out feeling like there's a nihilism to that. Like, I think that, beauty does not just have to mean pretty, right? Or beauty doesn't have to be, the visual equivalent of like a vanilla cupcake. It can be, certainly, but, I loved the way that artists like Julian Clinton would talk about beauty in terms of it, beauty, I think, to them could be found, and I don't want to speak for you, Clint, but at least for Julie, right? Like, describing the shit tits of the sewage treatment plant as being beautiful. And, I think that there was something really freeing and exciting about that to me that made me really rethink my own definition of beauty. And I think that beauty, ultimately, I landed in a place where I think, first of all, not only is it not corrupting, but it's essential. Like, I think it is deeply essential to the human experience. And I think that we neglect it and revile it at our own peril. And I also think that beauty is just something that pulls us deeper into life. It has this attractive, magnetic quality to it. I don't mean attractive in like the pretty sense. I mean like literally like it draws you to it. Like you want to be around it. You want to spend more time with it. You want to figure it out. And, it may not stick around. You may change your mind. But it's something that I think prompts us to give this like hell yes to life. It like kind of affirms just the richness of the human experience. And I love the way that art has been able, I think art plays a really important role in expanding our idea of what beauty is so we can discover it in so many more places.
Well, I mean, I think it evolves. It evolves, right? Like it's the more you do it, the more you know it. I think about it's like music. When you're a teenager, you're attracted to a certain kind of energy in music. Maybe you're rebelling, or a lot of people kind of cut their teeth on certain kind of music and they never really evolve much. But a real musician will just continue to evolve. The artist continues to evolve. The gallerist continues to evolve, and the buyer, a true, honest lover of art, will continue to they evolve. Their tastes evolve. And what they find is beautiful will evolve. It has to be that way. It's alive. If it's a living process, it will show changes, and that will, what beauty is will follow that. I think like anything else, you'll find the beauty, like the digester eggs that Julie mentions. Sure, if you look at them as just where rotten food goes, yes, maybe it's a funny thing, but the way those silver things catch light at the end of the day, facing that direction, and the way they light up over the city, it's undeniably a gorgeous aesthetic thing. And then knowing what they are is a different thing. And that unity of like opposites there make a very beautiful thing. And I think real beauty has a little bit of that in it. It always has some sort of opposition in it, or some balance of some sort, right?
Totally. I mean, this just to reunite the two books. I love finding out from a perfumer that a lot of these amazing flowers that we love, like the white flowers like jasmine or tuberose, I think one of the ingredients actually in their kind of scent makeup is basically the same aromatic chemical in poop, something like that. So to your point, it's like nature knows, right, that you can't have the beautiful and the fragrant without something a little bit foul.
Oh, I was a Greenpoint resident for many years, and I actually worked in politics and worked in Greenpoint issues, and I spent a lot of time in the waste treatment plant. A lot of meetings with the people who like took care of the place and sort of monitored there's a Newtown Creek monitoring committee, and the eggs are gorgeous. Like it really is like it's sort of an apt landscape or whatever for Greenpoint, which has got a lot of environmental problems, but it's a beautiful place.
You also gotta love, not to turn this into a conversation about sewage, but nonetheless, like you gotta love a city that like, doesn't hide its sewage, but like celebrates it. Like they basically put it on a freaking pedestal, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's
And like a big part of it was having, I think it was a Percent for Art program, and George Tracus was involved and puts, uh, did something in the front, and I forgot who it was that did the whole nature walk. And I'd meet with these people, like dedicated community activists, and said like, so they had to get this treatment plant rehabbed, and it's a lot of money, and it's a big thing. And they're like, great, more shit. And in Greenpoint, and one of the things that they really wanted was art. That was what they fought for, and we've had these meetings with Department of Environmental Protection, DEP, where they're like, where's the next phase in the nature walk? Where is like that coming? That is critically important in my mind. I'm like, who's going on this walk around the poop factory? But I mean, it was great, and it's a real big part of Greenpoint, and I think it's really public art, and I don't know, it is beautiful, and the work that people did on to maintain it and to make sure that that happened is really fantastic. Sorry, Clint, I don't know if you're talking.
No, I just want to go back to Bianca's book, because one thing that stuck out to me was that she attempted to come in at different points to get different perspectives. And I think she could have continued to make the book for years in that way, and found different versions of the art world, and different. We're looking at something about 400 years old now, in its current model, But I mean, you could find so many different ways, and I myself, I've come in at different ways, and the veils were sort of lifted as I entered and learned different ways, and even up to, say, someone like my wife, and seeing her trajectory and lifting veils there, or going through the different market or different levels of gallery, and then just in my own practice, somehow making paintings I never thought I'd ever paint again once I got my degree in sculpture, but the process brings you there. And I think Bianca's book, she had she had to end the book eventually, but she did come at it from different ways. And then I think that's the charm of the book, that you see different approaches. She even tried to make her own show once, right? So I think she really did a good job as finding as many points of entry, and kind of finding what kind of happened the same and what didn't happen the same from all these points that she entered at. I think I just want to acknowledge that. I think that's the strength of the book.
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I appreciate that. It means a lot coming from you, Clinton. Rami, I don't mean to take over your MC duties, but I noticed a couple questions coming in. Do you mind?
Yeah, go ahead. Do you want? Let me see.
I just remember. Yes. Someone had asked about whether someone mentioned. Oh, well, one question I see right here is, have you started painting again as a result of writing the book? So yeah, I mean, a bit. I will confess that it's something I want to do more of. I mean, I just love the process so much. I haven't had the time recently to take to myself to just sort of get lost painting and drawing the way that I really discovered doing with the artist Liz Ainsley, when we would meet during the pandemic and do these drawing exercises. But as the parent to a young child, I have found myself drawing a ton. I recently, over breakfast, drew my son a site I had seen of a flatbed truck with 4 excavators on the back of it. So he's obsessed with excavators. And then it's funny, I just saw this Basquiat drawing of an excavator that was really inspiring to me for my own depiction of excavators. So, and then there's a question about kind of works, sort of immersive journalism. I think someone had mentioned George Plimpton, and what other writers had been an inspiration. Certainly I have read and been very inspired by Tom Wolfe, Hunter S. Thompson. You haven't yet done as many drugs in the line of duty as he has, but there's always time. There's Bill Buford as well. I mean, his book, Heat, is hilarious and wild and disturbing all at once. But also books like Adrienne Nicole LeBlanc's Random Family, or Behind the Beautiful Forevers by Catherine Boo, or Susan Orlean, Emily Witt's Future Sex. I mean, I could go on and on, but I'm also in this moment of trying to refill my cup after writing this book. So if people have suggestions for great fiction or nonfiction, I am all ears. Clinton, Elizabeth, I don't know if there's any answer to that question that you want to chime in or share of a book that's, or an art book that's excited you recently, or a recommendation you have? Not to put you on the spot, but.
I started the de Kooning book, didn't finish it, not because it wasn't good, but I like reading about other artists' perspectives and things and the way things used to be. That's interesting. Yeah. Seeing like what was important to artists, if that's changed, or what's, how the art world changed or what was going on. That's interesting to me. Yeah, where artists, how they develop. We're living in the digital age now. We're living in this new age of social media, and I think that that's the way in which art is being consumed and viewed or criticized or not critical enough, or whatever way you want to see it, is definitely changing the way in which we see art. And of course, we've already mentioned the art fairs and the hyper commercialization of art and the quick cycling of art and primary, secondary art market, all this stuff. It's impossible to be an artist now and think you're going to ignore that and somehow make a living, have your work and your pleasure somehow meet. You're going to have to, every artist will have to confront the new world that we're living in, whether you like it or not. And I think that's what I think we're all confronting here with the new way, I guess, or the way that's happening now.
I think this book is really unique. There's obviously a couple of comparisons that people make, but it is a pretty unique book because of the amount of time and the level that you went into it, of course. The book that I assume is in your bibliography, I quoted it at one point, that I also really enjoyed, was The Girl with the Gallery, about Edith Halpert. And you really learn what's still the same about how this business is done, and then also what's so different now that we don't have to mail photographs to people and accept payment plans by whatever kind of strange money order they had back in those days. But very inspiring, especially for a woman gallerist.
I did read. That's a great book, and that was your suggestion. Thank you. There's also a question, I think, about context. I had written in the book about what I perceived as being kind of an outsized emphasis in the art world on context, right? The sort of web of names around an artist, like the social cachet of an artist, the way that so many art connoisseurs that I met seem to spend, to me, surprisingly little time discussing the merits of the artworks themselves, and instead outsource their judgment of the work to context, right? Would ask questions like, where did the artist go to school? Who owns the work? What gallery has shown it? Who is this person sleeping with? Who are their friends? And so someone had, I think, mentioned this, and I was just curious, for Clinton and Elizabeth, like, if you think, do you agree with that? Do you disagree? I mean, how do you see, like, do you think context is sort of a big deal, or did I misunderstand the role that it plays in influencing people's judgment of the value of art?
I think what you showed in the book is just that talking about everything other than context is so much harder and more complex and makes people feel very vulnerable to judgment. So I think it's very important, but it's much more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like a lot of things. When you kind of when you're talking about art, which is, of course, has a lot to do with history and context of where you are in history, context of how you've been sort of compared or somewhat vetted, I guess, as you sort of progress through either through the galleries and through your own process and your own evolution as an artist. The language does get weird, obviously. And I'm not a big supporter of the art speak at all. What I'm talking about is more about sort of the more it goes in the development, at least as an artist, you start talking more in negatives about what it's not and less about what it is. I think as you sort of press forward and you kind of challenge what things are, you start to enter into a place where context opens up again. I think we're defined by other things early on in our careers, either by what we dislike or like, or what we're against, or whatever, or what we're for. But I think it sort of breaks down as you start to develop more and more. I think, if that makes any sense, we're getting a little philosophical, but I think, yeah, context is everything. I mean, it's like that with anything else, isn't it? Yeah. No one's born fully formed, whether you're a punk band or whatever you are, a sports star. there's always context there to kind of help understand where something has developed. We don't just develop out of nothing. We're part of a historical narrative now, whether you like it or not. And just to choose is which historical narrative do you choose to frame yourself in. That's where we are now. We have so many of them now. Just like your book displays, there's so many different art worlds. We can frame ourselves so many different ways now. Question: can you control the way in which your art is framed? Well, the gallerist is there to help. The writers are there to help. The historians are there to help or not, or to hurt. But hopefully the artist has some control and the gallerist has some control and the buyer has some control over that. So it's sort of in your hands and out of your hands, but it's the best you can do to navigate the world. And I think that's what the book does. It helps people understand there are different paths to be navigated. Yeah.
I thought you provided some ways through it, Bianca. They're just not easy ones, right? Like you offer that people can really try to train their eye over a period of time. That's a big time investment, right? I know collectors that are very interested in that, and it's basically like a second job, to spend that much time in the art world looking at things at the amount that I do or that an artist does. So yes, there is some reliance on experts, and that's going to require some reliance on context.
But you do try to provide like bite-sized tips. It's not, you can't take a couple of years and do this, but you can, spend more than 30 seconds on a work and just have 5 observations. You know what I mean? And I think that's really helpful. When you talk about the museum and, is the context there helpful or unhelpful? Is it getting in the way? I think that's useful. I think so. I think Elizabeth is right. You are providing some kind of a path for people to take. Just tips, and over a lifetime, maybe that a couple of years, people do that, and then you start picking it up. It's not going to be the immersive experience that you were able to have necessarily.
I think it's like that. I think, like, for instance, I've talked to people who are into graffiti, or street art. There's a language there that if you're in the graffiti scene, you know the marks, the language. It's referencing things that if you're not in it, you don't read it as deeply. And I think we're talking about here an entry point into a path that can lead to anyone who wants to take it can learn more and more and more and learn more about the language and more about the history. That doesn't mean that every art has to be a completely obscured or shrouded in art speak. Art speak to me is the most annoying thing. It has nothing to do with the depth of the work. It has nothing to do with the quality of the work. It just muddies the water to make it look deep. That doesn't mean that there isn't language that's naturally evolved that's going to be there. That's part of the history of that work, and you have to know that in order to do it. But what's inside most of these art descriptions is definitely not adding to the, to me, to anything to do with the quality of the work.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think as a writer, I'm always like, look, if you can't, I mean, I revise and I revise and I revise. And when I read these press releases, I just think to myself, if you can't explain it to me simply, it means you haven't understood yet what you're trying to say. And I can tell you that, many paragraphs that went through many revisions until I figured out what I want to say and how to describe it simply. And it's really, yes, I read a lot of art speak, and I'm like, you've showed me your second draft. I would like to see your 12th.
It's incredible. I've read some things. It's word salad. Bridge made out of nothing to nowhere. It's incredible. There's like a ChatGPT 3 had a malfunction or something. I don't know. I mean, it's incredible. I don't know what to say. It's really weird.
Are there? And by the way, I want to be very cognizant of people's time. So, you guys tell me when you all need to do other things.
I found 10% battery, so we're going to keep going.
Okay.
I forgot to put it in charge an hour ago. Yeah.
Are there, like, getting into art speaking, and I a lot of it is real gibberish. I wonder how much is like, if a work is, I don't know, has a lot of context, not in a bad way, but like it's having a dialogue with whatever. I don't know. Is it always easy to express something that's in a piece or in an artist's sort of, how they go about things in a way that's simple, or do you need to kind of be deeply engage with the work and then also have a good facility for language to make it, like, how hard is it?
Rami Come on. I mean,
I'm
there's
asking. I don't know. I've never had to write these press
come
releases.
on, there's so many great science writers out there that can describe like the functioning of like our visual system or our olfactory system or our digestive system or black holes. These things that are pretty freaking complicated, heady subjects. And not to say that art isn't, complicated on the level of black holes, but like I'm just saying, I think it's a cop out. I think we can do it. I think we can.
You're a good writer. I'm not. I would agree that good writers should be able to figure it out. I don't know that that's everyone's jam.
I just don't think it's about the complexity of the work. I think it's about
Okay.
the staged complexity of language that exists to not elucidate the work, but elucidate your belonging to a certain club.
Right. I think there's just tremendous confusion about what purpose writing is meant to serve in these different contexts, right? Like to me, a press release was always explanatory. You're providing the information that people need to use to go look at the work and maybe like go back and forth between what's in the show and the press release. It's not meant to stand in. It's not meant to be criticism of the show. But I think it's really important. I think that it's helpful when you walk into a show to get some sense of some limited context of who is this person, why was this made, where is this from, what time period is it from. But I don't usually, I mean, one caveat to that is I would usually look at the work first and then go read a press release and then go back to the show again. But all this art speak, it's as if it's all these types of writing are the same, as if like really high level criticism is meant to do the same thing as a press release or an Instagram snippet that accompanies the like installation shots, and it's not.
Maybe we there's a question just now about who do the presenters think are important art critics right now. Maybe we can end with that question and pass the baton to whoever might be next. I just want to start because I have actually my answer to that question is right on my sweatshirt. So this is a sweatshirt that was made by an artist and graphic novelist named Walter Scott, who has done a series of graphic novels featuring Wendy, who is this character who is an artist, and she is a drunk mess, and she's like, tries to make her way through the art world. And I don't know if it's fair to call him, I don't know if you're gonna call him an art critic, but like he is one of my all-time favorite art writers, and he's coming out with a new graphic novel that is the newest installment in the Wendy series next month, which I'm so excited for. But I just, like, when I read his book, I was like, all of his books, I was just like, this guy gets it. Like, he writes about the art world, about art with satire. Like, he just nails all the weird intricacies and twisted logic and the hilarity of it all, but also with a dose of love. And so, anyway, Walter Scott is one of my all-time favorite art critics, writers, you name it. Yeah. Clinton, you're next.
I was thinking, I don't know what to say. I got thinking about it. You should follow, if you don't follow him, this account called We Open. You know this guy? He's an artist that just speaks from the heart, and his critiques, I agree almost with what he says. We Open. Check him out. That's his Instagram account. I don't want to say the wrong name right now, but yeah, I follow him. I follow that account, and I like it a lot. It's very simple. It's down to earth. It's ground level. It's an artist critiquing things, just talking honestly what he likes and what he doesn't like.
Elizabeth?
I mean, I have a huge list, but I will narrow it down to Hall W. Rockefeller, who writes for her own website called Less Than Half, as well as Hyperallergic, and she's a proponent of women artists and really speaks for that ongoing struggle. And so I really believe in what she does.
This is the book. Get the picture. You should all buy it. It's on our website, hellokinstler.com, and wherever fine books are sold. And I just really want to thank everyone for joining. Bianca, thanks so much. Elizabeth and Clinton, this has really been great. And I'm glad you guys all got to talk together about the book. And it's great. Wonderful job.
Thanks for
inviting me.
Thank you. And Elizabeth, we can check out your Instagram. It's over under fine art. Is that your Instagram? Cool. And Clinton, where's the best way to find your work?
On Instagram.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you all so much. It's such a pleasure and such an honor.
Thank you. Pleasure is mine.
Okay.
Bye.